This is Actar's Reviews, from anime to figures and beyond.
Hey, this is Actar and welcome to another episode of Actar's Figure Reviews. Today, we have a very unexpected surprise as I managed to get my hands on Voyager class Kingdom DINOBOT from one of my local toy stores. DINOBOT is one of my absolute favorite characters from all of Transformers history, and to be able to do an early review of him like this is beyond an honor. Let's start off with a quick look at the packaging. Just like with the rest of the Kingdom line, the packaging has all of this gorgeous artwork to compensate for the fact that the windows are now smaller to save on plastic. While I think it's a great compromise, the figure is no longer packaged in a plastic tray and is just held to the back of the cart by plastic ties. This means that buying and selling your figure secondhand or putting him back in the box for storage is going to be a bit of an issue. Regardless, on the back, we can see DINOBOT in his two modes. Note that these are pictures of the prototype of the figure and it's different from the final figure. We'll be coming back to this in just a bit. Alrighty, here is DINOBOT out of the package and in beast mode. He also comes with a random golden disc card and a set of instructions. Right off the bat, comparing him with the original DINOBOT figure and the MP, you can see just how big he scales in comparison. You can also see just how much effort went into the sculpt and proportions. Once again, just like the rest of the figures in the line, DINOBOT has a far more detailed and realistic beast mode. Personally, while I'm all for show accuracy, I understand that this is not the DINOBOT from the original 1990s cartoon. In fact, the realistic beast mode is precisely what differentiates him from the masterpiece figure and makes him unique. They even managed to get his dinosaur legs really close up into the body, unlike the original figure or the MP. While he's still a bit chunky, he'll have a much easier time fitting into, say, a Jurassic Park figure collection than the other Dinobots. Addressing some of the complaints I've read online, yes, he is indeed missing his front teeth. His tail looks slightly, phallic, thanks to the purple sword tip, and most egregiously, he has golden boobs, aka the robot mode hip joints, poking out from the front of his chest. Unlike with Black Arachnia, there is no way these can be construed for a pair of mandibles or anything. Now, these issues with the boob and tail could have been very easily avoided with a simple dash of paint or a change of the plastic colors. The reason I'm so certain of this is because the prototype figure on the back of the packaging has silver hip joints and a silver sword with a brown tip. I have absolutely no idea why they changed the colors at the last minute, because the beast mode ends up really compromised. While we're on the topic of color, there's actually quite a bit of paint in Dino mode, but I really don't understand what the point of it is, as the stripes are extremely faint and only appear in very bright light. The budget for all of this paint could have gone into bot mode, which, as we'll see later, is sorely lacking in it. A couple of other bits of kibble include the bot mode chest panels on the backs of the legs, with the eye looking disconcertingly like a saw of some kind, the underside of the figure, and the bot mode feet. While most of it is unavoidable, I really wish they gave his bot mode feet swivel joints to allow them to match the contour of the tail by rotating 180 degrees. One of the final complaints when it comes to the beast mode are the hands. Yes, they do indeed look quite ridiculous. They are big and flat and are molded at right angles, so you can't really get any kind of pose that makes them look good. Now, I understand why they needed to be flat, as they store away into the bot mode sides, but in my opinion, I still feel they're a little bit too big. In fact, even the robot mode could have benefited from them being slightly smaller, as they currently stick out from the sides. Moving on to articulation, it's just like the MP figure, but way worse. His head can move down, but doing so reveals a rather unsightly gap. The jaw can still open, and his mouth is painted on the inside. Unfortunately, his head can't even move from side to side, and there's really no reason why it shouldn't be able to. His arms can move forwards and backwards, in and out. There is a 90-degree elbow bend, and the rather contentious hands are on ball joints. They can rotate all the way around, and they can bend all the way in. As for the legs, because they become the bot mode arms, there are a ton of joints, but most of the joints are locked in place by this thigh piece. Splaying the legs out breaks up the sculpt, and the legs themselves have a rotation above the knee, a knee joint, a foot swivel, and the claws can open and close. Despite the numerous flaws, overall, I still think they did a rather decent job, especially when you take into consideration what he turns into. Speaking of which, DINOBOT Maximize! We start the transformation off by removing his tail, which will become the weapons. Spread the legs apart. Unpack the bot mode feet to free up the legs. Now that the robot legs are free, we lift up the entire back section of the DINOBOT. Focusing on the legs, we close up these panels, which have really intricate detail on the insides. And we fold up the feet while flipping out the heels to complete the legs. Rotate the hip around and fold down the dinosaur head. Moving on to the top half of the body, we unpack this remaining tail section to reveal Dinobot's head. Swing the entire head assembly back on this hinge, and we pack this peg into the back of the dinosaur head. Next, we fold up the backpack. It's really cool how they made this swing bar resemble his spine, even though you can't see it in robot mode. We then bring the arms up and away from the thigh pieces. Take the front of the thigh pieces and rotate them forwards to become the sides of his chest. We then close down the sides to complete his chest. Last but not least, we peg the hands and arms together and store them into the sides of robot mode. And straighten out his arms. And after a fun, simple and ingenious transformation in robot mode, he's undeniably DINOBOT, which is far more than I can say for most of the figures of him released in the past. Before I get into some of the negatives, I'd just like to remind you guys of how much of an achievement this figure is. We finally have a mainline DINOBOT that actually looks like him. A design that was once the sole claim to fame of the masterpiece figure is now far more affordable and readily available. But ironically enough, that's also to the figure's detriment because of the mismatch of expectations. While we do have all the trappings of a classic Dinobot design, including his amazingly sculpted head, broad dinosaur head chest that's rather ingeniously formed from the actual dinosaur head and some extra panels, the gold shoulders, and well, pretty much the entire lower half of the figure, it's just not as well proportioned or seamless as I think it could have been. Most egregiously, the shoulders are too small, the arms are way too long and skinny, and the hands are way too big. There's also quite a noticeable gap and disconnect between the dino head and chest panels, with the grooves and texture lines not matching up. He does have a rather unsightly backpack, which can at least still store the weapon on, and as mentioned previously, the dino arms are clearly sticking out from the sides. Perhaps a rather controversial opinion, but being a completely original reinterpretation of the character, here is where I think they could have compromised a little bit more on the 1990s show accuracy to have given us a design that would have yielded a more cohesive looking figure. As is, it's neither here nor there. Aside from the proportions, a lack of paint would be the gripe that most people have with this figure, because they decided to emulate the original CG model that was simply slathered in a myriad of colors. He ends up looking extremely plain with his unpainted legs and arms. They even axed the paint that was supposed to go onto the sides of his chest. Articulation is where this figure truly shines. He is simply riddled with joints. First up, the head is on a ball joint, up, down, side to side, and of course all the way around. His shoulders are double jointed. There's one joint at the body and one joint at the shoulder itself for a huge range of movement. The shoulders can move all the way around. There is an elbow bend forwards and backwards. There is a swivel above the elbow. There is a wrist swivel, and of course the claws can open and close. There is an excellent unhindered waist joint, 360 degrees all the way around. As for the legs, they can move all the way forwards and all the way out to the sides. Sadly, they can't move back as they run up against the dino chest. Just like with Optimus Primal, this can result in some paint scratching, so do be careful. He does have a 90-degree knee bend, a thigh swivel, his feet can move forwards and backwards, and he has ankle tilts. But all of that articulation would have been wasted if he didn't come with some cool accessories. And of course, he does come with his signature sword and shield, or rotating blade, or whatever you want to call it. Putting aside the questionable color choice for the sword and the lack of a free spinning gimmick for the shield, they complement the figure's articulation very nicely. While he doesn't come with his own golden discs, the Unicron.com third-party golden discs actually scale perfectly with him, and with his articulation, he's more than capable of grabbing onto them while waxing poetic about the meaning of life. And finally, here is how he scales with Kingdom Primal. While not accurate to the scale of the original cartoon, it's nice that they at least made Dinobot bigger than Primal. In conclusion, I personally really love Kingdom Dinobot, but more for what it represents. An honest-to-goodness transforming mainline Dinobot figure that manages to capture the essence of the rather disparate two modes with a fun and ingenious transformation. Honestly, while the figure is neither here nor there, Looking at it glass half full, it's accurate enough for it to suffice as a stand-in for the original Dinobot, and is different enough so that fans who already own the masterpiece figure, like myself, can still pick this figure up and enjoy it on its own merits. So, this is Actar saying, see you guys in the next episode.